So we're going to move on to a hearing now on House Bill 1645 and Senate Bill 5477. So folks, so we can get as many people to testify as possible. We're hearing both these bills at the same time. Staff's going to brief them, and I'm going to give everybody 2 minutes apiece, and we'll get to as many people as we possibly can. So the staff briefing is going to take a few minutes. And then when you come up, the same thing. When the light's green, you have 2 minutes. When it's yellow, you got 30 seconds. So that's how we're going to do things. So if you have a comment about either or both of the bills, just incorporate those into your comments. Briefing from staff, please, and the sign-up sheets.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, again, my name is Thomas Osborne, counsel to the committee, and I'm going to address, first I'll address 1645, and then I'll address 5477.
Please.
At the outset, I want to note that 1645 creates a comprehensive regulatory licensing and taxation scheme governing commerce and vapor products. And although it focuses on the prevention of the acquisition and use of vapor products by minors, the Act also has other significant parts, namely it creates a licensing requirement for vapor products distributors and retailers, imposes an excise tax on distributors or retailers, and authorizes the governor to enter into vapor products compacts with federally recognized Indian tribes. The regulatory licensing and taxation provisions very closely mirror existing statutory requirements applicable to commerce and cigarettes and other tobacco products. And with that overview, I do want to get into a bit of background, and then I'll move on to a more detailed analysis of the bill. Under current state law, the term vapor product is defined to mean a non-combustible tobacco-derived product containing nicotine that employs a mechanical heating element, battery, or circuit, regardless of shape or size, that can be used to heat a liquid nicotine solution contained in cartridges. Electronic cigarettes or e-cigarettes are a form of vapor product, and the terms are used often interchangeably. Vapor product cartridges generally include nicotine extracted from tobacco, glycerol, propylene glycol, and flavorings. A study conducted by the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, reported that in 2013, more than 250,000 youth who had never smoked a cigarette had used vapor products. The CDC also noted that in 2011, this number was 79,000 young people, which increased to more than 263,000 in 2013, thus reflecting a threefold increase in the numbers of minors being introduced to nicotine through vapor products. Vapor products are not currently subject to federal regulation or taxation. However, in April of last year, the FDA issued proposed regulations that would include coverage of vapor products under their authority to regulate tobacco products. However, the proposed rules from the federal government have not yet been adopted, but I won't get into summarizing them, but the proposed rules basically create a sort of general regulatory scheme for vapor products. State regulation and taxation of vapor products. Washington State neither taxes nor regulates vapor products except for the imposition of criminal penalties for the sale of such products to a minor. Specifically, a person who sells vapor products to a person under the age of 18 is guilty of a gross misdemeanor. State law does not prohibit the use or possession of vapor products by minors at present, nor does it require that a retailer be licensed to sell vapor products. Currently, tobacco product distributors and retailers must obtain a license from the Liquor Control Board. The distributor license fee is $650, and the retailer license fee is $93 annually. The other tobacco products tax, also known as the OTP tax, which a lot of this bill is based on the current statutes regarding other tobacco products. In any case, the OTP tax is due from a distributor for the sale, use, consumption, handling, and distribution of cigars, pipe tobacco, chewing tobacco, and other forms of tobacco except cigarettes. The OPT tax rate is imposed on the taxable sales price of most tobacco products at a rate of 95%. And there's other tax rates for snuff and other things, but 95% is the general number. The federal government requires states to enact and enforce laws prohibiting the sale and distribution of tobacco to minors. Under current state law, a minor who purchases or possesses cigarettes or other tobacco commits a Class 3 civil infraction, and a minor, for the purposes of the statutory scheme as well as for purposes of what I'm going to say today, means a person under the age of 18. The Liquor Control Board is authorized to enforce laws governing minors' access to tobacco. Where authorized by statute, the governor may enter into compacts and agreements with Indian tribes of this state regarding matters of mutual interest or concern. Many such compacts have been implemented regarding gambling and various taxation issues, most notably those regarding cigarette taxes and gasoline taxes. In 2001, legislation was passed allowing the governor to enter into contracts with the tribes concerning the sale of cigarettes. There is a youth tobacco prevention account in state statute in the state treasury that consists of funds derived from tobacco-related commercial licensing fees and monetary penalties. The Department of Health may use monies from this account for implementation of the laws governing minors' access to tobacco. Enacted in 1970, the Federal Poison Prevention Packaging Act requires specified household substances to be packaged in child-resistant packaging. The packaging required by the Federal Act must be designed or constructed to be significantly difficult for children under 5 years of age to open within a reasonable time. And now I turn to the bill at long last. Just so you understand the structure of this presentation, the bill is divided into 3 parts. Okay. Part 1 deals with youth access to vapor products. Part 2 deals with taxation, licensing, and enforcement provisions. And Part 3 deals with tribal compacting and tribal taxes. Starting with Part 1. Part 1 redefines vapor product to make it a little more specific and also broader at the same time, more inclusive. And it's redefined to mean any device that employs a battery or other mechanism to heat a solution or substance to produce a vapor or aerosol intended for inhalation, or a cartridge or container of a solution or substance intended to be used with or in such a device.
I'm going to pause you just for one moment. Certainly. So we know the people that are coming up to testify. The first panel will be Stu Halson, Joe Baba, and Holly Chiza. The next panel will be Kim Thompson, Mark Jarrett, Chris Hendricks, and Emily Murphy. So it'll be in that order, so folks can be ready to go here shortly. If you're down in another room, one of the other 4 overflow rooms, head this way. Thomas, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And finally, as is the case under current law, vapor product includes electronic cigarettes, vape pens, and other forms of nicotine delivery systems. Persons under age 18 are prohibited from purchasing or possessing or attempting to purchase or possess vapor products. Violation of this prohibition is a Class 3 civil infraction. All public school districts are required to have a written policy prohibiting the use of all vapor products on school property. Licensed vapor products retailers and cigarette retailers are required to post signs stating that the sale of vapor and other tobacco products to minors is prohibited. Vapor products may not be sold through a device that mechanically dispenses the products, i.e. a cigarette machine / vapor products machine. Both vapor product and tobacco product retailers are required to display and store such products behind the counter so that products are not accessible to the public without the assistance of a store employee. Offering of vapor products via samples to the public is prohibited. Coupons for vapor products may only be used during an in-person transaction at a retail store. The sale of flavored vapor products is prohibited, as is the sale of vapor products containing any substance that either increases the absorption of nicotine or contains psychoactive chemicals. And the retail packaging of nicotine cartridges and other substances intended for use of vapor products must conform with child-resistant packaging standards that I described earlier. The Health Department is granted rulemaking authority regarding the labeling and advertisement of vapor products. Vapor products retailers are made subject to the same sanctions and penalties applicable to non-compliant cigarette and tobacco product retailers. The monetary penalties that can be imposed on retailers, both tobacco product and other tobacco product, they're doubled under the bill, and such penalties are made applicable to non-compliant vapor products retailers as well. The Liquor Control Board's enforcement authority with respect to commerce and tobacco products is extended to cover the activities of vapor product distributors and retailers. Vapor products are subject to the same prohibition as are cigarettes and tobacco with respect to the in-state receipt of product shipments stemming from mail or internet transactions. Specifically, the shipment or transportation in the state of vapor products ordered by mail or through the internet is prohibited unless the person receiving the products is a licensed wholesaler, distributor, or retailer. The bill, okay, I'll just jump to part 2. which deals with taxation, licensing, and enforcement provisions. The bill creates a new chapter in Title 82 pertaining to the imposition of an excise tax on the distribution or sale of vapor products by licensed distributors or retailers. The chapter also contains licensing and general regulatory provisions applicable to licensees. And as I stated earlier, the taxation, licensing, and regulatory provisions in this tax chapter are parallel to and largely the same as those applied to commerce and tobacco products under Chapter 82.26. The Liquor Control Board is responsible for issuing the licenses and for the enforcement of the chapter, and also has rulemaking authority in order to implement the chapter. And there is a vapor products tax. The sale, use, consumption, handling, possession, or distribution of vapor products is subject to a tax of 95% of the taxable sales price. The distributor is responsible for the payment of the tax, but such tax may be imposed on the consumer if it was not previously collected. However, the tax may be collected only once during the commercial distribution and retail sales process. 90% of the proceeds of the tax must be deposited into the state general fund and 10% deposited into the essential health services account. Essential Public Health Services account. This account is created in the state treasury, consisting of 10% of the revenues, as I said, from the tax. The DOH must use the funds in the account to fund essential government public health services, to fund tobacco control and prevention, and to strengthen and support public health system capabilities. And finally, vapor products distributors and retailers must be licensed by the Liquor Control Board. For distributors, the initial licensing application fee is $650, as is the annual renewal fee. For retailers, the initial fee is $250, as is the annual renewal fee. A manufacturer that distributes or sells vapor products must have a distributor's license. And finally, we're at Part 3 of the bill, which deals with tribal compacting. Under this section of the bill, the governor is granted the authority to enter into vapor products tax contracts with federally recognized Indian tribes located within the state. The exception is contracts with the Puyallup tribe, where each such contract must require that the let me back up. I just reversed what I intended to say. With the exception of contracts with the Puyallup tribe, each such contract must require that the tribal vapor products tax rate be 100% of the combined sum of the state vapor product sales tax, state sales and use taxes, and local sales and use taxes. Turning to the Puyallup tribe, which I mentioned, contracts with that tribe must set the tribal tax rate at 90% of the state vapor products tax. However, the Puyallups must have an agreement with the state that requires them to remit 30% of all vapor products tax revenues it collects and remit that back to the state. The tribal vapor products tax is in lieu of all state and local taxes that would otherwise be applicable to vapor products. And the vapor products tax contracts with tribes must pertain only to retail sales in which Indian retailers transfer possession of the vapor products within Indian country. And the governor may delegate the power to negotiate these contracts to the Department of Revenue, and the Department of Revenue must consult with the Liquor Control Board during any such negotiations. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you. With that, Representatives Harris and Paulette. They'll be followed by Stu Halson, Joe Baba, and Holly Chiza, who will be followed by Kim Thompson, Mark Jarrett, Chris Hendricks, and Emily Murphy, who will be followed by John Wiseman, Tim McAfee, and Jason McGill. So
Senators, if I can interject for a second, I didn't describe 5477, which I can do very briefly.
If you can do it in less than 60 seconds, we'll do that.
Okay, I'll talk as fast as I can. Anyway, there's the Senate Bill 5477. Contains a redefinition of vapor product that's identical to House Bill 1645. It also requires that a substance intended for use in a vapor product or sold at retail must be packaged in child-resistant packaging. Substances contained in cartridges that are sold, marketed, or intended for use in a vapor product that are pre-filled and sealed by the manufacturer are exempt from these packaging requirements. A manufacturer that sells, distributes a vapor product must label the product with a warning regarding the harmful effects of nicotine and an instruction to keep the product away from children, and advertising of the product must have the same warnings and admonitions. Public schools must also have written policies virtually identical to those described under the other bill. Retail signage by vapor products retailers must display a sign concerning the prohibition of vapor product sales to minors, and all vapor products at retail must be sold through vendor-assisted sales, and it's unlawful to sell products from a self-service display. And now I am done.
Thank you very much for your briefing. Probably need a drink of water after all that. Okay, folks, let's get started.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for squeezing in us as legislators today. I'm here today. I'm Representative Jerry Paulette from the 46th District. I've spent a year working with the Secretary of Health, the UW School of Public Health, stakeholders from around the state, and pediatricians and others to develop this first in the nation comprehensive proposal to protect our children from the known addiction dangers for nicotine. I'm here, though, as a parent of a teenager. I have a teenage son. He's a high school senior. Last year, we went around, and we had no problem buying in store after store e-cigarettes, refillable or single use. And now, this past week, and you have in your packets in front of you the news stories from around the state showing that 28% of our high school seniors used e-cigarettes in the month of October. This is an astonishing epidemic of addiction. Just when we thought we had reduced the addiction to cigarettes, we have a new generation being addicted to e-cigarettes and nicotine. And as the School of Public Health report shows, and as the testimony from Dr. McAfee who's come from the CDC will show, the industry knows that nicotine addiction is caused by receptors in the brain that stop forming in the early 20s. So they market to our children, they market to teens and young adults, just as tobacco did. And I will say this, I am willing to bet that of hundreds of people who may want to testify or contact you today, almost all of them will say to you, yes, we should know what we're putting into our lungs, and we take a responsibility as adults for what is being sold to our children.
Thank you. And so, folks, just so you understand, this is fair. Legislators are not getting any more time than anybody else. So.
Thank you, Chair Hurst. Representative Vanderway, it's good to see you here. Hopefully you'll still be in healthcare with me. So I sit on the healthcare committee, and this is of extreme importance to me. I'm a father of 5, but more importantly, I looked at, you'll get some stats from me just that came from Clark County, where we had 4% in 2012 that had tried these devices, and we're at 28% now. Sitting on the healthcare committee in the last 3 weeks, as doctors came in, I thought it might be interesting because you can read on the internet about this, and there's kind of stories that maybe it's not that bad, and that it's at least maybe better than smoking. I've never smoked in my life, but I thought it'd be an interesting test to ask the doctors as they come through my office. I had over 100 doctors come into my office in the last 3 weeks sitting on healthcare, and I says, hey, doc, I don't smoke. But, I'm thinking about taking up some e-cigarettes now. I've read a little bit about it. Doesn't seem too dangerous, or it seems like it's actually perfectly fine from what I hear. Not a one of those doctors recommended that I start. I thought that was interesting. My name was part of a campaign of Bubba's Vapor Shop in my area, where if you called Representative Harris, you got a 10% discount. I received 300 phone calls. I decided I would start handling those myself personally. I handled 50 of those personally. And I think actually it backfired on Mr. Bubba, because the more I listened to these people, the more I realized how addicted they were and how sad it was. Some of these people wanted to quit but could not. This is not a venue. You'll hear very few of the 300 people that had called me. One of the questions I wanted to know is how long you've been vaping. Most of them over 2 years. How many you intended to quit? Very few. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony today and for bringing your bill forward. Stu Halson, Joe Babbitt, and Holly Chiza. And the sooner somebody starts, the better. Thanks, Stu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Stu Hulson here today representing the Washington Vape Association. You know, I've been here on this Capitol campus for 32 years now as a member and as a lobbyist. I smoked for over 42 years. Many of you saw me standing out in the rain doing that. I quit a year ago when I started vaping. I won't bring my vape device out. I started off at 12 milligrams of nicotine. Now I'm down to 6 milligrams of nicotine. My family's happy that I'm vaping and not smoking. My doctor is happy that I'm vaping and not smoking, although he probably would prefer I never started. Even some of the sponsors of this bill have told me, and I won't identify who, that they're happy that I'm vaping instead of smoking. You know, right now, in regards to flavors, right now I'm vaping banana flavored. I would recommend nobody ever vape tobacco flavored like the governor's bill does because it's too easy to go back to smoking. About 4 months after I started vaping, I had a cigarette, and it tasted like the little present that your best friend leaves on your lawn for you to pick up. To stay away from cigarettes, you need to stay away from tobacco flavored. This taxes vaping like taxing cigarettes. From a policy standpoint, if you want to move people from one thing that's more harmful to something less harmful, this is a wrong-headed way to go about it. But not only does it do that, it also taxes the equipment at that level too, the vape devices. That's like taxing pipes, humidors, and Zippos with a 95% tax rate. Please don't balance the budget on the backs of people trying to quit smoking. In regards to 5477, it targets youth access. We would be supportive of that with a minor amendment that would deal with the fact that at the point of sale, if a customer wants to mix flavors, that doesn't make the retailer a manufacturer, and we'll be willing to work with the sponsors and the committee on that.
Thank you for your testimony, and you got done with 1 second to spare. Perfect timing. Next.
Good afternoon, Chairman Hurst and distinguished members of the committee today. My name is Joe Baba. I am the founder chairman of Washington Vape Association, a nonprofit trade organization representing well over 100 vaping businesses in the state of Washington. Thousands of jobs are at risk because of HB 1645. It's a job killer. After hearing the testimony prior, just a few minutes ago, I'm going to change what I was going to tell you today. I'm going to focus on nicotine. You guys are getting bombarded with comments about how addictive nicotine is and how bad it is for you. Well, let me educate you on something. The large tobacco companies historically have added hundreds and hundreds of chemicals to tobacco when they manufacture a cigarette. And lots of those chemicals have impact on the nicotine that you take into your body when you're smoking a combustible tobacco product. For example, there's chemicals that are added that increase the absorption rate of nicotine when you inhale it from a combustible product. It also has chemicals in it that decreases the metabolism of nicotine once it's in your blood. There's natural enzymes in your system that will metabolize the nicotine, and those enzymes are broken down and inhibited from working properly from these chemicals that the tobacco companies put in cigarettes. A third item they put in there are chemicals that opens the air passages deeper in your lungs. So when you inhale when you're smoking, you get the smoke and the nicotine deeper in your lungs. And fourth and last that I know of, when you're inhaling, the nicotine gets into your blood and finds receptors in your brain, and there's chemicals added to tobacco that increases the sensitivity of these nicotine sensors in your brain. Guess what? Vaping products has none of those ingredients in them. Inhaling a vapor is not going to have anywhere near the impact with using nicotine as inhaling a cigarette. Please keep that in mind when you're considering the harmfulness or not so harmfulness of vaping versus cigarettes. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Holly Cheese, and I'm here on behalf of a company called Enjoy. We are the larger manufacturer of these products, and we are not owned by tobacco companies. We are an independent company that actually sources our nicotine from the same nicotine sources as the patches and the gum and the lozenges that are used by the FDA as a smoking cessation device. We have a multitude of issues with this bill that I'd be happy to submit. I first want to thank Senator Dammeier for his efforts on 5477 and Senator Conway. today. We continue to work that bill, but appreciate its focused nature on youth access. With respect to the governor's bill, we absolutely oppose every section of that bill as it's currently drafted. I'd like to focus on two issues. One is the flavor ban. Because our nicotine is sourced from where the patches in the gum are, our nicotine has no flavor. So if you want us to taste like feet, we can do that, but it is a flavor we would have to add. So if you ban flavors, you ban our product statewide. Second of all, it's worth noting that the folks that manufacture the gum and the lodgings, after a couple of years of that product being out, actually went back to the FDA and petitioned to be allowed to add flavor to those smoking cessation devices. Because when smokers get their taste buds back, which once you quit smoking after a couple months occurs, they didn't like chewing gum that didn't taste like anything. They didn't like sucking on a lozenge that didn't taste like anything, so they had to go back to the FDA and petition for flavors, because adults like things that taste like something. The second issue that we have that I'll highlight today is the internet sales prohibition. We are very concerned that this will lead to a black market activity, because we would be the only state out of 50, as well as foreign countries would still be allowed to ship in, and we are very concerned about the black market that this would create. This is an issue that has to be regulated on the federal level. It is on tobacco, and it needs to be managed appropriately on vapors as well, and not done in a state-by-state patchwork. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll move right on to Kim Thompson, Mark Jarrett, Chris Hendricks, and Emily Murphy. And after them, so folks can be ready, John Weissman, Tim McAfee, and Jason McGill. Welcome, folks. And whoever can start first, the sooner the better.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Emily Murphy, and I'm here on behalf of the Pink Lung Brigade and the Anti-Smoking Alliance. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to bettering the lives of Washingtonians by promoting harm reduction and alternatives to tobacco. I want to just set the context of why I'm here today. I watched both of my grandfathers die of emphysema after a lifetime of smoking cigarettes. I have a mother who has been a pack-a-day smoker for about 40 years, and every day I see her health deteriorate rapidly, and it's very hard to see that. I myself became a smoker, big surprise, and I smoked about a pack a day for 10 years. Until last year, at the behest of actually one of the members of this legislature, I was given an intervention and told to quit smoking, and that's when I transitioned to vaping. I went to the store up the street from my house, met this wonderful man here that helped set me up on a product with a low dose of nicotine. It's actually a mostly organic product from Ballard, Washington. And since then, I have been able to kick my tobacco addiction. Now, if you've never been a smoker, it's really hard to understand how difficult it is to quit. But for so many adults, this has been a life-changing intervention. And we are in absolute full support of legislation, specifically Senate Bill 5477, that prioritizes preventing underage usage, sales, possession, child-resistant packaging, and a gamut of other things outlined in that bill, so that we are keeping kids away from this product. We do not want to punish adults who want to have an intervention to quit smoking by instituting what is outlined in the governor's bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Kim Thompson. Thank you very much for having us here.
There you go.
My name is Kim Thompson. Thank you very much for having me here today. I am the president of the Anti-Smoking Alliance, and I'm also the owner of the Vaporium, one of Washington's first vape shops. Back in 2011, before anybody in the state knew about vaping, we came to Pierce County and asked for this product to be banned from sales to minors, because we do care about children. We are trying to push health. We are not trying to push addiction. We have found a way that helps people put down the cigarette. Vaping mimics smoking in the sense that it allows the hand to mouth, the inhaling and the exhaling of the vapor, and it leaves behind over 7,000 toxic chemicals, which are what is harmful in the addiction. Addiction alone does not kill people. It is the way that you take in the product that you're addicted to. So nicotine becomes deadly when you take it in through smoking. Since I have had my store open, I have seen thousands of people put down the cigarettes, and my best customers quit me altogether, and that is what we hope for. We want to see people moving down on their nicotine and off of the product. Just the other day, I got my hair done. My hairdresser was a smoker. She became a vapor, and when I went to go see her, she let me know that she had not only gotten down to 0, but passed her kid off to somebody else who wanted to quit smoking. And those are the stories that your Washington State vape shops want to hear. We are not Big Tobacco. There's no tobacco in my product. I don't buy any of my products from Big Tobacco. I buy them from local businesses right here in Washington State. I thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, committee. My name is Mark Jarrett. I'm a registered voter in the 29th District. I'm the Vice President of the Anti-Smoking Alliance and also a business owner in Lakewood, Washington of an e-liquid manufacturing facility called Bonsai Vapors. So although I'm opposed to much of the bill, let me tell you that Bonsai Vapors as a company has already implemented safety measures, child-resistant caps for its products to make certain that children do not get into them. It's a very difficult thing to mandate across the board a sweeping condemnation of a product that has helped so many people in this industry and in this community stop smoking and stop their addiction to tobacco. It's a struggle. I was a 15-year-long smoker myself and was able to quit due to smoking. I had actually given up and just committed to actually smoking, and through vaping I've been able to give it up. And that means that I'm not imbibing and ingesting all of the thousands and thousands of chemicals, carcinogens that go along with smoking. And I very firmly believe that it is tobacco harm reduction. Our product is got about 4 ingredients in it. For those of you that are unaware of what's in e-liquid, 4 main components: propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, natural flavorings, and nicotine. And of those, they're all pretty much naturally occurring in what we use on a regular and daily basis. Comparing this to cigarettes, which we know contains 600 ingredients and when burned creates more than 7,000 chemicals, 69 of which are known to cause cancer, it's hardly a fair comparison by any standard. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson and committee for hearing us. My name is Christopher Hendricks. I am a registered voter in the 27th District. My wife and I own the Vapor Cafe and also an e-liquid manufacturing company called Stash Sauce. I can tell you as a community, from the time that I've been in this industry for a year and a half, we have self-regulated, on sales to minors. We all believe that any sale to minors is wrong. I think you will find that the industry is self-regulated on all warning labels on the packaging. Again, child-proof safety caps, and all store access is behind the counter. This is not something new. This is not something that we are not already doing as an industry. We've already taken care of those pieces of the pie. We agree with most of that part of the legislation that's proposing. Also with that, youth access. When it comes to youth access, we hold ourselves high in not allowing youth, but also it comes down to the parental support in the home when it comes to youth access also. As parents, we are expected to prohibit our children from getting their hands on alcohol or any other prohibited product that is illegal to the sale of minors. So we do the same thing, but we have to rely on the parents in their homes to provide, to prohibit access to those products. With that, thank you for time, and if you have any questions.
Thank you for your testimony today. Appreciate your coming. With that, we'll move on to John Weissman, Tim McAfee, and Jason McGill.
Good afternoon, Chair Hurst,
Welcome.
members of the committee, thank you. My name is Jason McGill. I work in Governor Inslee's policy office in health policy, here to support HB 1645, this important bill requested by Governor Inslee and the Attorney General. This bill stems from the governor's primary health initiative called the Healthiest Next Generation. This is a Healthy Kids initiative. It's a bipartisan supported effort aimed at ensuring our kids are more physically active, eating well, and not exposed and using harmful substances like cigarettes, e-cigarettes, marijuana, and the like. That's what leads us to this bill and the focus on this effort. These efforts, when invested in early, will reduce obesity and chronic diseases in adulthood, and that will pay dividends in an amazing and more healthy society. So now we know that 9 out of 10 adults who have become addicted to cigarettes began using before they were 18 years old. So similarly for e-cigarettes, if we stop it young, we can stop it for life. This is a youth substance use prevention bill. All due respect for an adult who may want to use these products to stop smoking, go for it. I hope not to stand in your way, and I understand there are key debates there about the tax and regulation that we must have, but we've looked at those items carefully. The tax should not stand in the way. It should still be cheaper than a cigarette, and I will not speak to any more in terms of the tax piece today, as that will be discussed in the later committee, in the Finance Committee. But something must be done, and this bill does adopt all the key pieces that we know work for tobacco control and prevention, for marijuana, for the other substances that we know that we have some experience trying to prevent. Now, in developing this bill,
I have to ask you to wrap up. I'm sorry.
with all of the people we have worked with in the state and our local partners, this is what we agreed to come up with, and happy to provide any further questions and opportunity for that. Do want to just highlight that we're open to making good changes in the bill. The governor wants to work with everybody to see if there's something that we could accomplish to reduce youth access to these devices in our state. And with that, I'd be happy to turn that over to our great Secretary of Health.
Good afternoon, Chair Hurst and members of the committee. I'm Secretary of Health John Weisman. I'm testifying in support of House Bill 1645, and I'm ringing the alarm bell on the use of vaping products by our youth. You heard earlier data on our youth, and recently we released data that says that 1 in 4 seniors is now vaping in the last 30 days, and that 1 out of 5 sophomores is vaping in the last 30 days. To be clear, e-cigarettes for our youth are not a problem of a future. They are the problem from yesterday, and we need to urgently catch up. Second, nicotine, the predominant drug in vaping devices, is highly addictive. In fact, the Surgeon General has said it is as addictive as heroin and cocaine. Nicotine in use is also concerning because it can have lasting adverse effects on adolescent brains that are still developing, and it negatively impacts fetal development and puts toddlers and young children at risk for nicotine poisoning. And don't forget that vaping devices can also contain other addictive substances like marijuana. This is especially concerning because just last week we released data that shows sophomores who think that regular marijuana use is risky has dropped from 46% in 2012 to just 36% in 2014. That's a 20% reduction in just 2 years. This bill is about protecting our youth. It includes public health provisions such as licensing retailers to ensure they are not selling vaping products to our youth, ensuring child-safe packaging, restricting displays, over-the-counter sales, and flavors that are so attractive to our kids. Finally, vaping in our youth is a public health emergency, in my opinion, and that threatens all the good work that we have done to decrease tobacco use and nicotine addiction in our youth. Only you, as a legislative body, can authorize the proven public health policies that can help protect and improve the health of our youth. I need you to take action this session. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Tim McAfee, the Senior Medical Officer and the former Director of CDC's Office on Smoking and Health. Thank you, Chairman Hurst and members of the committee, for the opportunity to testify. I'm testifying at the request of Representative Paulette about scientific evidence and public health impact of electronic cigarettes. This testimony is not for or against any specific legislative proposal, and I'm also submitting detailed written testimony for the record. The 2014 Surgeon General's report notes that e-cigarettes, in combination with rigorous surveillance and aggressive strategies to end combusted or smoked tobacco use, could help reduce the harms of conventional tobacco use in established adult smokers, but only if their marketing, distribution, sale, and use lead to complete quitting of use of combusted tobacco products like cigarettes. Why? Because according to the Surgeon General's 2010 report, unfortunately, cutting down on the number of cigarettes smoked does not significantly reduce tobacco-related health risks. In addition, to achieve any net public health benefit, we must avoid adverse consequences of e-cigarette sales and marketing, including youth use, exposure to toxins in users and non-users, and long-term combined use with continued smoking. Currently, e-cigarettes are not regulated by the FDA, although they issued a proposal last year to do so. But the timeline for full regulation is uncertain and will likely be fought in the courts. Federal regulation will also not address certain policy interventions such as use in public spaces and taxation. But our primary concern at CDC is the rapid, unprecedented increases in youth use of e-cigarettes, as reviewed by Dr. Weissman. Experimentation in U.S. middle and high school students has increased dramatically in the past 3 years. Recent national data show an even more dramatic rate among high school students, 17% among 12th graders nationally, higher than the use of smoked cigarettes. They've thus become a major portal of entry to nicotine use for youth. Now, although they might help some adult smokers when used similarly to medicinal nicotine products, there's conflicting scientific evidence on how e-cigarettes are impacting long-term cessation at the population level. To date, no e-cigarettes have been approved as a smoking cessation aid. So in conclusion, given what we know about nicotine addiction, the harms of nicotine, uncertainty around toxic exposures, and that e-cigarettes are not regulated, evidence supports efforts ensuring that children and youth do not have access to e-cigarettes, avoiding marketing and product characteristics that appeal to youth, protecting non-users from involuntary exposures to e-cigarette aerosol, and ensuring that smokers who want to quit have access to proven cessation methods. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. So let me ask you one question. We're not going to do a ton of questions, but this is a point now that a lot of folks have brought up. And Jason, you brought it up as well, which is, hey, if you're an adult, pick your way in life. But this is where we need to separate out the difference here. This is about healthy young people and how people form and make decisions. So if there's a place where this is beneficial, and I don't know that we know to what degree it is for, let's say somebody's smoking cigarettes today, and they go, gosh, I want to get off cigarettes, I've tried, I can't do it, and they try this product and it gets them off cigarettes. We have to weigh that against the people who may be very young, who could use this product, who maybe never would have smoked cigarettes, which I think was your point, and then having them at some point in time switch over to cigarettes. And I hope no one's advocating that someone would actually use it to do that. Probably somebody could make money off of it. But have there been any studies that you're aware of that are showing what is that beneficial link? We know that there's concerns, but is there some, how broad is that nexus? In other words, how will we quantify what percentage of people are stopping using cigarettes compared to what's happening with youth? And I almost see these as two separate issues, but we have to kind of keep these in mind as well. How beneficial is it for someone who wants to quit smoking? Do we have any scientific studies that have been done in that regard? Either one of you is fine. Yeah. And I know you may not have a study in front of you, but what are folks thinking?
Yeah, I'll give you a quick answer, and then I would refer you to my written testimony as well. And the short story is, the first thing I would want to just reiterate is we think there is zippo nada that is beneficial to adolescents.
I understand that. Yeah. And that wasn't mixing that. So if I frame my question wrong,
okay.
I think that pretty much everybody's testified so far as said that. But for an adult that wants to get off of it, is this something that's happening 1% of the time or 80% of the time? Or I don't know how frequently that's happening, and how will we define that?
Yeah, clearly, as I'm sure you will hear after us, that there are thousands of people who tell individual stories of their own success and how this has worked, and we certainly don't discount that and want those people to be successful. What has been more controversial is really that the evidence has been mixed around what's actually happening at the total population. And you identified many reasons why that could be. The other one is essentially some people, if they use an e-cigarette in a dual-use pattern, as a stable dual-use pattern, not as just a step to either switching or quitting, instead of quitting, then that is disastrous for their health. And what we're trying to determine is how many people are doing that versus how many people are actually quitting or switching completely. And at the very top level, we know that a large majority of people currently in the U.S. are dual. The pattern is more common than what we will hear later this afternoon. More common pathway is dual use. And as I noted, unfortunately, if somebody just starts smoking or vaping e-cigarettes and they continue to smoke, they will derive very minimal benefit from that and catastrophic harm if they did that instead of quitting.
Thank you. And just so you understand, I wasn't advocating that 15-year-olds should use this product.
Yes.
Either one of the products. I'm hoping that no one will actually advocate for that. Representative Kirby.
Thank you. I think this is the right panel. I've got a question. Have any of you ever heard of a guy by the name of Dr. Michael B. Siegel?
Yes, I have.
Okay, he wrote an op-ed, I think it's an op-ed, in the Wall Street Journal here in just the last couple weeks. And he calls himself a professor at the Boston University of Public Health and has conducted tobacco research for 25 years and has been an advocate for anti-smoking policies. I Googled him, and that appears to be the case. And his article, the headline is "The Misbegotten Crusade Against E-Cigarettes." So this is an anti-smoking guy saying, "Oh, wait a minute now, don't just start beating up on e-cigarettes." And it's an article I would suggest you read, unless, and that's my question is this guy for real? Is he? There are people who say they're scientists who say there's no global warming. So what's going on? Is this guy legit or not?
Yes, so Representative Kirby, thanks for that question. And if you actually Google your blog, you will actually see him quote me in there and actually have a discussion sort of around our policy position here. I think the truth of the matter, and he does, I believe, work for a school of public health, I honestly believe that we don't really have much of a difference with Dr. Siegel. The point, and you heard Dr. McAfee say it here, is that for folks who are adult smokers who have not been able to quit, totally switching to electronic cigarettes is probably, and I would say, a healthier option. You've heard that here. The challenge, of course, for us is finding a policy balance between making sure that we don't get in the way of that and actually preventing uptake of e-cigarette use in youth. And we think our policy in the proposal that the governor has put forward strikes that balance. It calls for licensing retailers to make sure that what they are saying is true, that they are not selling to minors. It talks about child-proof containers so that we can prevent the child poisonings that we're seeing. So the things in the bill, even the tax itself, which we're not going to get in here, has a link to this delicate balance. The overall price one would pay for the e-cigarette products is less than what they would pay for tobacco. So the taxing structure has an economic incentive for those who are current smokers who want to totally switch to vaping as a way to reduce their harm. It is also an attempt to try and keep the price somewhat higher for youth so that youth don't take up this habit. We know that for every 10% increase in the real price of tobacco, for example, that we see an overall decrease in consumption, and that is largest in kids. So even the taxing structure is designed to walk this delicate balance between the policy initiatives I think that we're all concerned about. So thank you for that question.
I have a question for Jason, just a brief one, but on that, I'm suspicious of the link between simply raising the price of cigarettes and having it plummet. In other words, if we raise the price of cigarettes to $10,000 a pack, I don't think smoking goes to zero. I think the purchase and use of illegal cigarettes continues on in a fairly steady line, and I think there's a point of diminishing return that concerns me. Jason, my question for you, for the governor's office, and please take this back as we have this discussion. If our focus is primarily on kids, and I think that was your testimony. Do we have the enforcement mechanisms in place for such a quickly and rapidly evolving industry? So if we have people that have these stores and they're saying, look, we're not going to sell the kids, and I think that anybody that's bothering to come all the way down here to Olympia to testify probably is taking this pretty serious and probably is not going to sell the kids. But there's a lot of people that are not here and a lot of people that could take advantage of this if we don't have a proper regulatory scheme. Also, if somebody is running a legitimate business and abiding by the rules, they're not going to mind somebody coming by to make sure that they are. But are we properly addressing in such a large piece of legislation and such a growing industry, do we have the number of people that are going to be necessary to go out and check and do these spot checks? And of course, if you're playing by the rules, you won't have a problem. If you're not playing by the rules, we know what happens in alcohol. You get a warning and probably a couple days suspension. The second time, you're going to get about a month suspension. The third time, you're going to lose your license. I mean, we're very strict about underage access to alcohol, youth access to alcohol. This is a big deal, and it is the fact that we have agents out there. Are we anticipating a proper fiscal note and the number of folks that are necessary as part of this if we're going to move forward? Because if we don't have some enforcement in this, the people that are playing by the rules are going to get cheated by the people that don't. So I don't want somebody making a profit because they're breaking the rules and then the store down the street saying, no, we don't sell the kids and we're having a hard time competing with them. It's not fair. And they'll come in and complain about that, and rightfully so. So I'm hopeful that we have a realistic assessment of what that costs and what that manpower is to make this work for the legitimate players that want to be involved in this business.
Yes, appreciate that, and we have given considerable thought to that, and the fiscal note would certainly reflect a focus of youth and underage enforcement, and to particularly focus on that from our liquor control and our local partners. If I may make two additional points on that, I appreciate having my meetings with the e-cigarette and that industry. I appreciate that they're more or less accepting and interested in that portion of the bill, and that is the great portion of this bill. There are some other attributes that I think are incredibly important to enforce. One is internet sales. 94% of websites checked sold to minors. No ID check on delivery at the resident. This is easy, right? But in Washington, we have an internet prohibition for tobacco sales. We can do that for this as well. That's one idea. The other thing I might mention is the Senate bill. I did not comment on that, but as much as I support the elements of the bill, many of them were adopted from the governor's bill, the good work there. But it doesn't create a system. It is not enough. There's no enforcement, and there's a criminal penalty. There needs to be an administrative fine and fee structure to have a decent enforcement mechanism. To your point, Representative Hurst, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Cadata.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Following on the Chairman's comments, fiscal note's very interesting. If you're trying to reduce the use of these products, why does the fiscal note go from $23 million in the first biennium to $125 million just 4 years later? It seems to me you're not reducing much use. It actually goes up by 5 times. It looks to me like you're riding the revenue wave here. How does that happen?
So my understanding, and we can get you more detail from the Department of Revenue folks and who have created the assumptions that built into this fiscal note, but the basics are this. The first initial year or two, a very low sort of take-up rate. Because the enforcements are getting up and running, it's basically voluntarily, you're paying your taxes, you're just doing this voluntarily. We don't have the people as focused and quite a control over the system yet. And as you gain more control over that system and have a clear who is a licensed retailer. You know that now. You have law enforcement dedicated to do spot checks. You have a system in place. It gains in terms of tax sales. That's the tax increase over time. That's what that is.
Thank you. With that, we're going to move on to, and thanks for your testimony, folks.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Ian Corbridge, Al Ralston, and Larry Pursley. And they're going to be followed by, so folks get ready, Matt Zukowski, Jacqueline E. Laverne, Christopher Brady, and Zach McLean. Okay, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you very much. My name is Ian Corbridge, and I'm the Clinical Policy Director at the Washington State Hospital Association. I'm here today to testify in support of House Bill 1645. From the Washington State Hospital Association, we support both aspects of the bill, from the regulatory aspects that are comprehensive in nature, as well as the tax component of this bill. And we believe from the tax side, the revenues that are generated should be used for prevention-based efforts. As noted by my colleagues that were up here previously, these efforts are directly targeted at trying to improve the health and well-being of our youth in this great state. Healthcare and public health have collaborated for decades to reduce smoking rates and tobacco use, both across the nation and within this state. Vaping products threaten the successes that we have seen and are currently undermining our efforts to really optimize health within our youth. And I think as a practicing individual within the public health field, I would say that, as others have noted, this is truly a public health crisis that is in the current midst. The emerging data on the health impacts and youth access is truly disturbing, both from a clinical as well as a public health perspective. I know colleagues gave a range of numbers earlier on. One that I find striking is that 1 in 5 youth in 10th grade have used an e-cigarette product within the past 30 days. I think if you reflect on that a moment, it's truly a devastating number for us to realize at this moment. Healthcare and healthcare often talks about achieving the triple aim, improving quality, improving population health, and reducing healthcare cost. Healthcare and public health can only do so much to achieve those aims, and we really need a strong regulatory body with efficient oversight and mechanisms in place to allow us to achieve the goals that we are trying to achieve. One part of that, and which I think will be addressed in other committees, is the tax component of that. Taxation has been a proven and effective intervention in terms of curbing tobacco use, and I think we can see similar gains here within the use of e-cigarettes. Again, thank you for your time and your support on this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Al.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Al Ralston. I'm here representing FedEx, a transportation regulated carrier in the state of Washington. We have no position pro or con on the bill, but from a technical standpoint, as a carrier, as someone that would be in the business of delivering product from either a wholesaler or a retailer to an end user or another retailer, we do have some concerns with a couple of the sections in the bill as it relates to an attempt to provide regulation, which we think needs to have some clarification, and we've got some suggestions to it, as well as a penalty proviso that could be quite punitive if the definition isn't done correctly. And we think that this can be done and still meet the merits of where the proponents of the bill are. I've spoken to the prime sponsor of the bill. He's well aware of it, and I don't think it was his intent, nor the Department of Revenue or the governor's office, to get into the issue the way that the bill has previously been drafted. Staff has a copy of proposed amendments to 4 sections. For example, in sections 214, 219, and 223, they refer to someone who's transporting a vapor product for sale. The person who is making the transportation must have in their actual possession invoices or delivery tickets of the vapor products and names of the consignees, et cetera. That's something that we don't have. If you think of a 777 loaded with a lot of packages that are coming into the state, we have no way of knowing what is or isn't part of that. So we've got some suggestions on changing that. And in terms of the penalty proviso, all conveyances, including aircraft, vehicles, or vessels that are used or intended for use, could be confiscated if product has found that hasn't been properly notified. And we think that that may be a bit harsh in losing a 777 with this bill. So we're asking for some assistance. Thank you.
So you don't have some old DC-10s you want to get rid of, and they could just be seized and forfeited?
That's correct, sir.
I don't think the intent here is to change regulatory systems, so hopefully staff has copies of those, David, Tamas, Rashi. Well,
if they don't, they will.
Because we will address those. The other thing is we haven't made a decision yet on whether we would ban internet sales and delivery. There is a system that exists today, and actually I tried it because we have some alcohol issues, and I wanted to see how well it really worked, and so I actually ordered a bottle of wine and then saw if they would leave it at my house if I didn't answer the door, and of course they won't. And then they make you go to a secure facility. I think it was a FedEx product, actually. And when I went down there, it was actually locked in a cage. And they wouldn't allow me to let anybody else get it. And I had to show a driver's license and the credit card it was bought with. So I'm pretty convinced that the companies, UPS, FedEx, or whoever they all are that do these things are very careful because we have laws in place. So if we do allow these sales, I'm assuming you'd like it to parallel the system that we have for alcohol sales that people purchase over the internet?
That's correct. And there's ways that we can do it. We've got Larry Pursley here, who's probably a little bit more experienced in the area of trucking than I am, but the answer would be yes.
Great. Larry?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Larry Pursley, and I'm with the Washington Trucking Association. To save time, I agree with what Al has said. There is some sections in here talking about invoices. We actually have bills of lading, but the bills of lading are dependent on us getting the actual information from the shipper, so we don't want to lose a piece of equipment simply because somebody put something else in a box. So I think for-hire carriers probably ought to be excluded from this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, folks. Yeah. Most of them signed. So with that, Matt Sikowski, Jacqueline Laverne, Christopher Brady, and Zach McLean.
I'm balling this all day. All right. Hello. Thank you, Mr. Chair and the members of the committee. My name is Matthew Sikowski, registered voter in District 26. I'm, of course, opposed to HB 1645. I quit smoking because of vaping approximately 4 years ago or 10 years after I literally watched my father die of pancreatic cancer. It literally took me that long to actually quit smoking. Contrary to popular rhetoric, raising the cost of adult product does not keep minors from acquiring the product. Historically, minors acquire adult products from their homes and their peers, and not from retailers. Cost is therefore not a factor to those who are not paying for the product that they are using. In actuality, according to the Department of Revenue in 2012 and 2013, $695 million was lost due to tax evasion and smuggling when additional sin taxes were applied to cigarettes. Instead of swaying people away from smoking, higher taxes encourage people to find another means to acquire the product. The governor proposed bill will not raise the funds needed for Washington State. It will only hurt the heart of the vape industry in our community and opening the playing field to larger interests. Taxation simply is not the answer to child safety. Thank you.
And that's a concern of mine. I'm glad you bring that up, where that level is, because I'm not sure that we have this direct line of a chart going up of taxes and a chart going down on use. I think what happens is taxed and legal use probably drops dramatically, but there's certainly potential for a black market out there, and that's a concern that I share. So thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, if I may add one more
Please,
thing.
do so.
There's also the
2 minutes.
black market and the gray market. Black market, I imagine, would be me driving to Portland and picking up a carton of cigarettes. The cost for the gasoline is equal to the tax I'd pay here. So buying 2 cartons of cigarettes would be a net win. Gray market would be like using pipe tobacco, which has a lot higher nicotine content, and teabagging that. And that would save costs significantly if this bill were to pass.
Thank you. Welcome to our hearing.
Thanks to the committee. My name is Jacqueline E. Laverne, and I am an active registered voter in District 20. I oppose 1645 because it helped me. I mean, it's not going to benefit my life or most of the vapors and the vaping community. I believe in the harm reduction that vaping provides. Sampling is a part of the process to becoming smoke-free. Having access to my local vape shop and the ability to sample was so important when I quit smoking. To quit having tried quitting several times. I have 3 teenage boys at home. It was a nightmare trying to quit. I tried several ways. If I hadn't been able to go into a brick and mortar shop and have someone show me how to use this product so that I could get off the 2.5 to 3 packs a day I was smoking, there was no way that I would have been able to stop smoking. I went from 24 grams or milligrams of nicotine in my e-liquid all the way down. I'm down to 3 now after 3 years of being smoke-free. My children are ecstatic. Having 3 teenage boys in the house, they are very well educated on the pros and cons of smoking versus vaping. They tell me about the kids that they see at school. They don't encourage anybody to do it either. We don't appreciate the vape shops that allow students to come in that are underage to purchase these things, but the taxes that are coming up will just kill anybody's chance of being able to afford something that really does work, that helps them quit smoking for the future. And a lot of people will lose their jobs. It's just tragic. The thousands of people and the thousands of jobs that have been created by this industry, they're all going to lose them because of these taxes that are coming up. The B&O tax, losing revenue for the state, all of that. I mean, it's so over the top. It's going to be very tragic.
Thank you. And right before you start, the folks after you will be Alexander Gerard, Lindsay Hovind, and Jeff Ketchel will be the next group. Actually, and Meta Lee. Welcome.
Hello, thank you. My name is Zach McLean. I own Future Vapor on Capitol Hill in Seattle. I'm a registered voter in the 43rd District. I smoked for 25 years, a pack a day. As soon as I was introduced to vapor products and I found my flavor, I was able to quit. And it was that day. And that's what drove me to open a shop. This 95% tax, applying a sin tax to something that we've all talked about, it contributes to harm reduction, is just not the way to go about doing it. That 95% tax is going to put me out of business. It's going to, put all the other vape shops out of business, and we're going to lose thousands of jobs in Washington, all registered voters. We already pay a sales tax. We pay a leasing tax, a B&O tax, employment tax. We're paying our taxes. My whole goal as a vape shop owner is to help adults get off cigarettes, not to get kids on vapor. You know what I mean? If this tax goes down, 95% sin tax will just put me out, and I won't be there to help these people. That's basically what I came here to say.
Thank you for your testimony today.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, sir.
My name is Christopher Brady, and I'm a registered voter in the 10th District, and I'm here to oppose House Bill 1645. Being in the United States Army, vaping helped me not only get through that, but be there for my 5-month-old and make sure that I'm around here longer to support my family. The taxes go through. I don't want to see all these vape shops get closed down and everybody lose their job, and I don't want to see people that have worked hard to quit smoking and get people to quit smoking continue to keep smoking. And I just feel it's the wrong way to go about it, like he said. That's all.
Thank you. How long did you smoke, sir, if you don't mind me asking?
I smoked for 3 years.
For 3 years. How long ago did you quit smoking?
2 years ago, I believe. I went to the Vapor Cafe in the Vaporium, and they helped me from there.
Have you smoked cigarettes? Once again, I don't want to be overly intrusive. You don't have to answer these if you don't want.
Fine.
But when you quit smoking, did you go back and forth between the two, or what
No,
did
sir.
you do?
I started vaping, and that day I was instantly off, and I haven't looked back since.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony today.
I can take a picture.
Alexander Gerard, Lindsay Hovind, Jeff Ketchel, and Meta Lee. And then the next folks will be Mark Johnson, Amy Rhodes, Roger St. George, and Ajinder Handa will be the next folks. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you very much. My name is Dr. Alexander Gerard. I'm the Clinical Managing Director for the Washington Poison Center. I'm also a board-certified toxicologist. Many of you may have seen the statistics that we've been reporting to the state, especially regarding 2014 calls that came into the Poison Center. We had 182 phone calls regarding e-cigarette products. Of that, 133 exposures were in kids. And of the 133 cases that were called into us, 109 were in children 1 to 3 years of age. So this is a child that got into an e-cigarette product or a vape pen and developed symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, perhaps even some increased heart rate, and some of them actually had to be admitted to the hospital for observation. We, along with the Washington State Medical Association, are in full support of this bill, both 1645 and 5477. We believe that the lack of child-resistant packaging on many of these products is a big issue why children are getting into the products. Many manufacturers have already been making that change. We applaud that, but this is something that needs to be mandated across the state. We also are in full support of appropriate warning labels for a lot of these products. Many manufacturers have also done that, but many of them are written in microfiche and very difficult to read or even to understand. Furthermore, there's a lot of data out there now showing that many of these products are actually not as safe as many proponents say they are. There's a study that came out in January from Portland State University that found of the products, the chemicals that are in vape products, propylene glycol, when converted under heat, gets turned into formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is used for embalming the body once you're dead. We're now doing that to ourselves while living. Formaldehyde is also on the same level as asbestos, benzene, and arsenic. It's considered a carcinogen, a group 1 carcinogen, and this is something that we're putting into our bodies. Anything that we can do to make this product more difficult for kids to get into, we fully support. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony, Doctor. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Lindsay Hovind. I'm here with the American Heart Association. Chair Hurst, thank you for the opportunity to testify in support today. I want to speak to just a few components of the bill. But first, the dangers of tobacco use are well known, and tobacco control efforts over the past 50 years have saved millions of lives. E-cigarettes are a new class of product in this landscape, and use, as you've heard, is exponentially rising among youth. The health effects of e-cigarettes have not yet been well studied, and much is still unknown. But the risk e-cigarettes pose to youth, both as a route to nicotine addiction and a potential gateway to tobacco use, is of course highly concerning. This bill aims to restrict youth access, and as such, AHA does support this bill. We applaud the aim, including the prohibition of use on school property, and I think it's very noteworthy that the bill establishes the retailer licensing structure for e-cigarettes and establishes those retailer fees and fines for underage sales on both tobacco products and e-cigarettes. These proceeds do fund grant programs that help fight tobacco use and reduce tobacco use by youth, and we feel like funding those programs is truly critical. I would like to note that the Heart Association has a concern with defining vapor products in a standalone definition. We support including e-cigarettes in the definition of tobacco products. This ensures tobacco control laws that already exist will apply. It's an efficient and consistent way of applying many of the same regulations to e-cigarettes. That being said, we're very pleased to see this bill. We appreciate the effort to curtail youth use of e-cigarettes, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Either one.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Maida Lee. I'm a pediatrician and trustee for the Washington chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. I represent almost 900 pediatricians in the state of Washington who support this bill 1645 and strongly urge that you support it as well. We are concerned that e-cigarettes, in its current unregulated state, will reverse the decreasing trend of tobacco use among youth that has been occurring over the last 20 years. The tobacco industry is prohibited from marketing to youth. However, e-cigarette manufacturers are allowed to attend and sponsor youth events. They're allowed to advertise on TV targeted towards youth, and they've produced over 7,764 youth-targeted flavors of nicotine. Of most concern in the pediatric community is the unprecedented rate of accidental ingestions that are going on and attributed to Poison Control Center calls regarding e-cigarettes. Nationally, across the nation, the numbers have gone up from 1 per month to 215 per month, and in the state of Washington, we've seen in 2014 a 233% increase. So, unlike adults, kids and adolescents lack the ability to make rational decisions and don't really understand fully the consequences of their actions. And this is because before age 25, the brain is not completely developed. Connections for judgment, reasoning, and decision making aren't developed yet, and in fact, nicotine receptors in the brain are still being developed during this time period. So there's a critical time period where addiction develops. And what we know about the data is that 90% of current smokers started smoking before the age of 18. So it's really important for us to do what we can to prevent marketing of tobacco products to our kids and to enforce regulation of e-cigarettes and vaporized products such to the same degree as other tobacco products.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Jeff Ketchel. I'm the administrator for the Grant County Health District and president of the Washington State Association of Local Public Health Officials. And I'm here today to support Bill 1645. Last spring, 2 vapor lounges opened up in Moses Lake, and the Grant County Health District and the Board of Health decided, well, what does this mean for the residents of Grant County? And so we began to do our homework. And what we learned concerned us. What we learned is that e-cigarettes are these space-age looking devices with candy-like flavors that are used to deliver nicotine and other drugs to their users. We learned that it's a completely unregulated industry without any sort of standards or inspections and no requirements for labeling. Lastly, we also, in talking to our local school district, students were being found with these things in the schools, and the school officials had no idea what to do about it. In September of last year, the Grant County Board of Health unanimously passed an e-cigarette ordinance banning their use in public places with the exception of vapor lounges where minors are prohibited, and making it strengthening the laws regarding selling to minors and possession by minors. Well, we want to see these out of the hands of kids. We want transparency for the people that do choose to use these products, and the Grant County cannot do it alone. It is very easy to cross borders. We would like to see a statewide solution. Specifically, we would like to see a well-funded regulatory system overseen by the Liquor Control Board. 2, we would like to see laws that make these less appealing and less available to children, including what my colleague said about child-proof packaging. And lastly, we would like to see a clear set of standards as to what's in them so people can make a clear and informed choice what they are putting in their bodies when they use them and what bystanders are inhaling when they're standing next to a user. Thank you for your time today, committee.
Thank you for your testimony, folks. Thank you for being Representative Kirby.
Thank you. I heard some testimony, and I'm still. Here's the problem we have. We're not lawyers, but we make laws. And I'm even on the Judiciary Committee, and I'm not a lawyer. I'm one of the few people not a lawyer on that committee. And part of the problem that we have is that usually we have lawyers coming up to us, and one will say that the law says this, and one will say that the law says that. It's the very same law. And so, that kind of puts us in sort of a bad spot. Now, with this issue, I've got doctors coming up here, and they're doing the same thing. So I asked a previous panel if this guy who wrote this article is legit, and the indication was that, in fact, he is. And feel free to tell me if he's a quack or whatever. But he writes in the Wall Street Journal about the study where high levels of formaldehyde in the aerosol of an electric cigarette concluded that vaping may therefore be more harmful than smoking. But the study was carried out under unrealistic conditions in which the e-liquid was severely overheated. Under more realistic conditions, the study failed to detect any formaldehyde. Who's right here? I'm not a doctor.
Yes, no, so that's a great question. I think what I would say in response to that is, when cigarette smoking first came about, we didn't realize at the time that it caused lung cancer. And it wasn't until years later that we realized there was a correlation between smoking cigarettes and actual lung cancer. And I would say it's a similar situation right now with e-cigarettes. We do have some preliminary data. We do know that propylene glycol, of which that is a component of e-cigarette juice, does get converted to formaldehyde. people who are vaping don't just vape once and call it a day. They're vaping continuously throughout the day. So even if it's minute amounts of formaldehyde, it's a chronic exposure to formaldehyde that can be carcinogenic and cause long-term health effects.
And I would just also add, many e-cigarette companies are owned by Big Tobacco. And after 50 years of public health combating Big Tobacco, I just have a hard time trusting that what they're saying is true about their products.
Okay. Now, this guy is an and I asked, is this guy really an anti-smoking advocate? Everything I've read says that he is. And you know, what he says is, under more realistic conditions, the study failed to detect any formaldehyde. So the way you make it convert to formaldehyde is to severely overheat it. So you see what I'm saying? Maybe in everyday use, the suggestion here is that that's not the case. Help me out.
I mean, I guess I would beg the question, what's normal everyday use? Because under study conditions, we're always trying to ascertain what that exactly looks like, and people vape in different ways, and there are different types of products where you can change the energy or the battery power that is actually going to the coil to heat up the e-juice. So I would say that that just varies from person to person, but the fact that it does get converted to formaldehyde, and that is concerning.
So if there's maybe something to regulate the way in which, you know, to prevent these things from being overheated, for example, might be helpful. Am I right or not?
Well, I would like to see a set of standards, since these are completely unstandardized. The fact an e-cigarette recently exploded in a man's house in Tacoma and burned his house down. Because of these lack of standards, because this industry is somewhat hiding in the shadows as to what's in them and how they're manufactured, we can't answer the question, Representative.
Okay.
I'd like to add to that and say that, you know, part of the problem with us not knowing whether or not e-cigarettes are effective as a quit smoking device is because there's no regulation as to what goes in there. So how can we study what is variable within content within that nicotine package? You know, there have been studies that have shown that although it's reported that there's 0 to 3.5% nicotine in an electronic cigarette, like studies have actually studied how much nicotine is in there, and it has ranged from up to 30% in the same brand within the same packaging. So there's so much variability because of the lack of regulations, and that's what I think we're asking for.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you.
With that, we'll have Mark Johnson, Amy Rhodes, Roger St. George, and Ajinder Honda. They will be followed by Fel Pajmula, Meg Carlson, Bryce Hackett, and Lori Stoley will be the next four after them. Welcome, folks. Let's have somebody get started.
Hello.
There you go.
Chair Hurst, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Joni Deutsch, Director of Government Affairs for the Washington Retail Association. Unfortunately, Mark had to step out, so I'll be filling in for him today.
That's fine.
We are here today in opposition of this legislation. The Retail Association and its members support the lawful use of age-appropriate adult individuals and use of these products. The Retail Association does not support a 95% tax, as this will destroy the market for these products. In particular, this bill will hurt law-abiding, tax-paying retailers, especially small convenience stores. Additionally, prohibiting the sale of flavored products is ill-advised. Some adults that choose to use these products enjoy the flavoring, which should continue to be an option. I'm joined today by Amy Rhodes with 7-Eleven and her franchisee owners, which I will let her introduce. Amy?
Good afternoon. My name is Amy Rhodes, and I'm a business consultant and a corporate employee with 7-Eleven. I represent 242 corporate-owned stores, corporate and franchised-owned stores in the state of Washington. Just to let you know, we already self-regulate within all of our stores in the state of Washington. We treat e-cigs and vape like tobacco products and like alcohol. Every customer is carded, as well as we not only self-regulate by ourselves, and we check once a month to make sure our stores are following the rules. Obviously, the Liquor Control Board comes in and checks us as well. I'm going to yield the rest of my time to two of our franchisees that will be affected by this.
My name is Roger St. George. I'm a franchisee down in Grays Harbor County. I have 3 stores, 2 in Aberdeen, 1 in Hoquiam. I've been around for 22 years. E-cigarette tax, it would be very burdensome. It would drive a lot of my customers who have switched to e-cigarettes and vapes back to cigarettes, which is a huge problem for my stores. I have 23 employees that are all full-time, and we are struggling against tribal tobacco stores already. If people do start increasing their use of cigarettes again, they'll be pushed back to the tribal tobacco stores, which sell for $2 a pack less than me. We already lost 90 packs a day when they opened up 2 blocks from one of my stores, and are struggling to hang on and not lay anybody off in the last 18 months. So a tax to increase the vaping and e-cigs would push people back to that non-competitive store without a level playing field, and may endanger my employees who are already working in one of the highest unemployment counties in the state.
Thank you. I don't live in your neck of the woods, but I go clam digging. I think I've stopped at your stores on the way down to clam digging at the ocean.
Thank you for your patronage.
Welcome.
I'm Chandrasekhar. I'm filling in for AJ Handa. I am a 7-Eleven franchisee, very responsible convenience store retailer, as Amy has also brought it out. During the last few years, the taxes on the cigarettes have gone up so high, and the gross profit that the franchisee was getting has come down from 21% to 13%. And it is 30% to 50% of our business. The way it has hurt us, it is kind of driving the business, driving you out of business. And we have the stringent measures that are being followed, whether it is checking the ID, or it is a kind of distribution system, or it is the layout. That is, there is no self-service for such items which are to be carded. And also there is an effective way of training, whether it is with the Liquor Control Board or it is the come-of-age computer-based training which one has to undergo every year with 7-Eleven. 95% taxes will drive most of the small businesses out of business and will not let them continue the way we are continuing. Healthier option, everyone is saying that vaping is a healthier option in comparison to cigarettes. And also it has been brought out that riding the wave, which is a revenue wave, is not right. So therefore the suggestion is more enforcement, much stringent ways, and less of taxes to keep us alive. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony today. Thanks for coming down, folks. With that, we'll have Fel Jamula, sorry if I messed up your name, Meg Carlson, Bryce Hackett, Lori Stoley, and some of this is my pronunciation, and some of it's how some folks write their names sometimes. Welcome. Let's get started with someone, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Could you bring the microphone a little closer?
Sorry.
There you go.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Fel Pajimula. Work for the Tobacco Prevention Program out of King County in Seattle, Public Health Seattle in King County. I have the privilege of working with high school students, teenagers. We conduct tobacco and electronic cigarettes compliance checks, and I supervise the controlled purchase attempts at local tobacco retailers, most of whom are now selling electronic cigarettes and other vaping devices. I take 15 and 16-year-old students to conduct inspections where they enter a store and attempt to purchase these age-restricted products that we've been talking about today. This is important prevention work because teens are accessing e-cigarettes at unprecedented numbers. The recent release Healthy Youth Survey for King County specifically, 1 in 7 10th graders have used e-cigarettes or vaped in the past 30 days. 1 in 5 high school seniors reported having used e-cigarettes in the past 30 days, and that's 21% up from 3% in 2012. Part of this work that I do allows me to work closely with teachers, administrators, volunteer coordinators in schools and local community groups to inform them and educate them about the popularity growth of the e-cigarettes and the vapes, how easy it is to fit these in their pockets, how the ease of use of them in the classrooms, in the hallways, and how easy it is for them to pass around to their peers, their younger classmates and things like that. In addition, I have also seen companies go beyond the marketing of tempting fruit candy and other fun flavors and are packaging these products with themes that are especially targeted towards young adults and teens. One in particular that plays off the current popularity of a video game called Minecraft and other retro 8-bit game graphics like Nintendo from the 80s and 90s, as well as other cartoon themes that I've seen these things packaged in. I strongly encourage you to support this bill as it reduces youth access to these products and protects the health of our residents. My current 15 and 16-year-old volunteers are regularly able to purchase these products during our compliance inspections. And if there's one thing for you to remember about the work that I do, it's this, and that's unfortunately I have a growing number of these showing up in my drawer from successful purchases from my compliance check youth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And while the next folks are going to testify, the next people that will be up after them will be Joshua Baba, Tim Currior, something or other here. Levi Brennan will be the next folks. Please.
Chair Hurst and Committee, my name is Meg Carlson. On behalf of the School Nurse Organization of Washington and many secondary school nurses in the state, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to inform you on how the use of e-cigarettes and vapor pens have negatively affected my students. Our students. I've been the school nurse at Ballard High School in Seattle for almost 14 years. We have about 1,650 students. I average between 50 to 70 positive drug and alcohol evaluations each year. Up until about 4 years ago, alcohol was the teen drug of choice. After the legalization of marijuana, students' access to cannabis products became much easier. Siblings, friends, parents, theft. The availability of these e-devices has made it more difficult to detect the use of tobacco and marijuana. The Washington State Healthy Youth Survey for Ballard students for 2014 will be released this week, but the results for King County youth in grade 12 show that cigarette smoking has trended down from 18 to 10% in the last 6 years. This looks like a good thing, but the e-cig vape use has gone from 3 to 12%. At our 10-minute break in the morning, we have about 70 students smoking just off campus. This is double the number of smokers we had last year. Most of the newcomers use vapor products. According to our school security specialists, this year alone, over 100 cigarettes and vapes have been confiscated. The use of cannabis, nicotine, hash, and even heroin in the oil of vapor products is well established in the teen community. A student can inhale the vapor and experience the effects of the drug without someone knowing that they just smoked weed during lunch. However, the cardiovascular system and their central nervous systems both know both nicotine, a stimulant, and cannabis accelerate the heart rate and blood pressure, and I frequently find a resting heart rate of 130 and blood pressures of 160 over 110 in someone who just took a few hits. It's not healthy to have these vital signs at rest. It's not healthy to inhale nicotine or the chemicals used in producing the liquids used in e-cigs and vapes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon, Chairman Hurst and members of the committee. My name is Bryce Hackett, and I am a current senior at Columbia River High School in Vancouver. In addition to my academic studies, I also serve as a member of the Clark County Public Health Advisory Council. This fall, I will be attending Rice University in Houston, Texas, where I will major in biomedical engineering, specializing in immunology and global health technologies. With regard to the youth use of e-cigarettes and other vapor devices, I have personally noticed that there are some major trends developing within my community. First, usage of these devices by youth on and around my school campus is increasing. These devices are easy to conceal, and they emit no lingering smoke or stench. If a student wants to use one in class, all that they have to do is quickly lean down into their backpack or pull the device out of their pocket and take a puff. Vancouver Public Schools has a strict policy regarding tobacco, alcohol, and drug usage that is heavily enforced. As such, students are rarely seen using these devices on campus. However, there are 2 locations on private property adjacent to my high school where up to a dozen students can be found at any given time using electronic cigarettes. Last week, I had a conversation with a fellow student, an underage minor, who uses a vapor device regularly. She started using this device as an alternative to traditional cigarettes. When I asked her about her use of a vapor device, she said to me, "It's a better alternative because there's no tobacco in it." My main concern is that my peers have been under the lifelong impression that technology brings positive impact to society. If these devices are more technologically advanced than a traditional cigarette, it is incorrectly assumed that they are healthier for you. Supply for sale in local convenience stores is ample and commonly accessible to anyone. Vapor liquid flavors are either fruit or candy-based. Marketing materials reinforce this premise that e-cigarettes are a healthy or flavorful alternative to traditional smoking. My peers are clearly seeing and misinterpreting this information. I strongly encourage you to support House Bill 1645. This legislation is necessary to improve the health and quality of life, not only for youth in my community, but for youth throughout the state of Washington. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman Hurst and members of the committee. My name is Lori Stoley, and I'm currently the assistant principal at Marysville-Pilchuck High School. I am the former assistant principal athletic director at Coopville Middle and High School. Before I became a school administrator, I was a prevention center director for 35 school districts for Northwest ESD. I would like to express my appreciation for funding in the governor's budget to Department of Health regarding tobacco, e-cigs, and marijuana funding. I feel like we are reliving the past, a time where no perception of harm existed regarding tobacco or marijuana. In 2002, Governor Locke established the Tobacco Settlement Authority. Schools developed policies and procedures, community campaigns were developed, training and resources were provided, and we hired student assistance professionals. I am proud to admit there was a reduction in tobacco use. In 2015, we live in a state where there aren't any regulations regarding e-cigs or vapor products. My school determined these devices to be similar to tobacco. We have progressive discipline, and the consequences are a one-day suspension. We ask ourselves the question often, are students using drugs right in front of us? The answer sometimes is yes. Students are smoking THC with scented oil. Our normal nicotine tests can't be used to test these new devices. This is a time where rapid innovation occurs and the burden of proof lies at schools' doors. I have firsthand knowledge of adults using vapes on school grounds, students using vapes on buses, dances, and sharing vapes during a walk fit class. We find ourselves in great need of public education campaigns, training for administrators, SROs, and nurses, the hiring of student assistance professionals, and resources for prevention, intervention, and cessation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And with that, we'll move on to Joshua Baba, Tim Clyer-Copper, Levi Brennan. And folks, we have 10 people left. We're going to get everybody in to testify. We're going to get this done. But if you have something to add, that's great. If you think somebody's already said what you had to say, that's good too. Somebody get started, please. Welcome.
Thank you, members of the committee, Mr. Chair. My name is Joshua Baba, and I manage a vapor chain called Vaporland. If House Bill 1645 passes, it's putting the burden of balancing the state budget on the backs of Washington state residents that are trying to quit smoking. As you're probably aware, the majority of smokers are also in our lowest income brackets. So when we heard that $125 million tax number coming in a couple of years, just imagine who that's coming from. I do want to address the formaldehyde study that was brought up earlier. Number one, if you do a little bit more digging on the study, you'll find that it was actually funded by the same trial lawyers that sued Big Tobacco, so they may or may not have a stake in that. The study itself was not actually a real study. It was actually a letter sent to the New England Journal of Medicine that was meant as an that was requested, and it was not a study that kept track of every single method it used. I emailed the researchers that performed the study and asked them what types of units they used and under what conditions they did. And it was very unrealistic, but I still put it, I had the products in our store, so I put it together and tried it out to find out what would happen, and the phenomenon called a dry hit happened. It is terrible. If you were to Google up a dry hit face, you will find many memes or just pictures of nasty faces. As a vapor, you can't stand a dry hit. And what he was doing is he was severely overcooking the juice, and everybody that vapes tries desperately to avoid that. We get people coming back into the stores all the time. How do I do this? Because I need my nicotine, I'm addicted to it, but I can't stand this. So as far as trying to regulate the devices in order to keep it down, people do that themselves. They keep that temperature where it's not going to do that to themselves. I'm here to advocate for reasonable regulation where all parties are brought to the table and we can talk things out and figure out what's best for our community. We do not want minors getting a hold of these. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you to the committee and the chair for letting me speak today. My name is Levi Brennan. I'm 23 years old, and I am a co-owner of Cloud's the Limit Vapor up in Everett, Washington. House Bill 1645 will definitely cause a lot of issues for the vaping community. It will definitely tax it out of business. As an ex-smoker, I started smoking when I was 12, 13 years old, very, very young. So I used to be one of these children that we are so concerned about right now, getting into it. And now I am one of the adults who has chose a different path to actually have an alternative way of smoking. And I can tell you within 1 month, within 2 weeks of quitting smoking after smoking for almost 10 years, I immediately felt different. I used to wake up every morning coughing, spitting up stuff that I didn't even know what it was coming out of me, but I kept smoking. I was very addicted to it. Since quitting, I have not been to the doctor one single time. I used to go 2 to 3 times a year for bronchitis, strep throat issues, many issues involving my throat and lungs. I was diagnosed with a type of asthma that was induced because I started smoking at a young age. And since then, I have not had any breathing problems. My dentist has also commented on how much better my teeth look, even though I have not changed my brushing or flossing methods. All I've done is quit smoking, and that's what I'd like to say today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Before the next gentleman starts, the next people that will be coming up will be Susan Turner, Patricia Atwater, Aaron Davidjic, can't pronounce your last name there, and Amber Carter. Welcome, sir.
Hi, I'm Dr. Tim Clare-Coper. I'm a registered voter in the 30th District. For the past year, I've served as the Director of Marketing for Vape, the largest manufacturer of electronic cigarettes in the United States, located in Monroe, Washington. Over the past 5 years, my company has helped thousands and thousands of people find an effective alternative to traditional tobacco cigarettes. There were 2 issues I wanted to mention, one business and then one in terms of health and safety. First, let's deal with business. 95% tax on electronic cigarettes would put my company out of business. We don't make cigarette-sized systems. Our most popular systems retail between $150 and $250. They're incredibly effective for those that use them, but a 95% tax would make them literally unreachable for most people. We have 45 employees. Our company also provides employment for a number of cottage industries that depend on us for their livelihood. In addition, we have over 1,000 dealers in all 50 states and in 67 countries. They would be adversely affected as well. Taxation, we believe, was never intended to put companies out of business. Secondly, roughly 50% of our business takes effect online. Banning internet sales would also put us out of business. Our dealers order online as well as thousands of customers. What's more, in an industry where 98% of the e-cig products come from China, you'll be destroying one of the few American companies competing with them, and a Washington state-based company to boot. Legislation, we believe, was never intended to put American companies out of business. We also want you to know that this industry has never had objections to reasonable regulation, especially when it comes to minors. That's absolute. And we believe that a lot more research needs to be done before an entire industry is decimated by the state of Washington, and we would urge you to defeat these bills.
Thank you for your testimony. Thanks for coming, folks. We've only got a few more people, and we're going to stay just a few more minutes longer to make sure everyone has a chance to testify. Susan Turner, Patricia Atwater, Aaron, and it's a D-V-E-D something, maybe an E on the end of the name there, and Amber Carter. Go ahead and get started.
All right.
Welcome.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time to meet with you. I'm Susan Turner. I'm a board-certified family physician, and I'm the health official in Kitsap County. I wanted to let you know about our concerns locally. About 1 in 4 students reported on the recent survey in 10th and 12th grades that they'd used an e-cigarette in the last 30 days. That's higher than the Washington average, and it's very concerning. Use has tripled in the past 2 years, like many other places that you've heard about. It's very concerning. Smoking is the #1 cause of disease across the United States, so discussing effective cessation methods is a very important discussion. E-cigarettes, though, are not a proven cessation method, and they are not safe. As a physician, I'll be one of the first people to recommend something to my patients that is shown to be safe and works. There have been 2 large, well-controlled studies with results released just in January that show about a 50% reduction in quit rates among smokers who use e-cigarettes. And especially concerning is the National Youth Tobacco Survey, which showed that about half of the children who had used e-cigarettes intended to start smoking. So not only may it not be a great cessation device, it may be an initiation device, and that greatly concerns me. All the major medical organizations have identified that these materials are not safe, and anything that's been tested in a lab, these mixtures that are mixed to be used in e-cigarettes, have been shown to contain toxins. Finally, they are not regulated, so it's really impossible to know what is included in these mixtures, and I recommend completely eliminating youth exposure and adult exposure, but especially youth exposure until we know they're safe. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Patricia Atwater, and I manage the Tobacco Studies program at the University of Washington. The director of our program, Dr. Abigail Halperin, is unable to testify today, so I'm here kind of in her stead, representing her views as well as my own. As background, our program this past fall, in collaboration with others, authored a comprehensive white paper on e-cigarettes that you may have seen. We thoroughly reviewed the scientific evidence over the course of several months and synthesized it in the form of a report as well as several fact sheets. So with House Bill 1645, Washington State has an opportunity to prevent e-cigarettes from becoming a major public health threat in our state. And I'd like to take this time to respond to some of the assertions made today here by proponents of e-cigarettes. So you've heard the claim that e-cigarettes are safe for consumers and therefore don't need to be regulated. While there's little doubt that in comparison to smoked tobacco, as you've heard, e-cigarettes are safer, it's really important to assess their safety in both absolute and relative terms, relative to combustible cigarettes. The chemical composition of e-cigarettes, as you've heard, often includes a host of toxins, including heavy metals, volatile organic compounds, flavor agents, and nicotine. And some of these contents, as you've heard, are carcinogenic. Despite these facts, and amid mounting evidence of serious packaging, labeling, and design problems, e-cigarettes are still completely unregulated. There's ample and urgent reason to require sensible product safety and consumer protection measures, as this bill sets out to do. Second, the e-cigarette industry has claimed that public health advocates overstate the dangers of e-cigarettes to young people, and you've heard the results of the 2014 Healthy Years survey, and they clearly refute this charge. There's a lot of reason for concern. Developing brains of young people are uniquely susceptible to nicotine addiction, a fact the tobacco industry knows all too well, as evidenced by recent e-cigarette ads that harken back to the days of Joe Camel and blatant marketing to kids.
Thanks. I'll have to ask you to wrap up there. Thank you for your testimony today. We only have 4 people left, and they're all going to get a chance to testify, so everyone who will have signed up will have had an opportunity to testify, which is important on an issue like this. Stephanie Allen, Meta Lee, Dave Buckley, and Cale Hamilton. And some folks may have left. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
Sure, no worries. So, do you want me to go ahead or just wait?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, I'm Dave Buckley. I'm a registered voter for District 20 out of Yelm. I'm also the Chief of Operations for the Volcano Vapor Cafe located in downtown Olympia. At the end of the day, my question universally comes down to whatever happened to accountability? The accountability at the parent level as well as the accountability at the level of the individual store owner, the individual access point for how there's youth access. I'm wholeheartedly in agreement that removing youth access is something that we are very interested in. We universally card all of our customers, et cetera. However, I think the intent of this bill to minimize youth access is dramatically failing in that it doesn't address the root cause, which is either minors having their older friends purchasing it for them, or having parents buy it for their minors. What I would highly encourage is a redraft of the bill where there is extremely punitive measures for people purchasing it for minors. As well as what was heard earlier, where a member of one of the school districts stated that she has a space off campus where students go and smoke and vape, etc. Again, whatever happened to accountability? If those people are to be accountable for their students, one would think that an accountable and realistic person would go out and address the issue firsthand, not just sit idly by and let it happen.
Thank you for your testimony, sir. So that's a lot of people, and a lot of other people signed up on this bill not asking to testify. Did we miss anyone that happens to be here? Come on up, sir. Ma'am. You'll be our last two folks, and that will close the discussion and public testimony on this hearing once we're done with yours. But I want to thank everybody for their patience. I also want to thank people for their demeanor and their kindness and respectfulness throughout this. A lot of times we get a lot of people, it doesn't really go so well, but everybody's been very kind and very respectful and very patient. I want to thank everyone, whatever their view is, for how they've conducted themselves today. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Allen. I was a 43-year smoker. I started at the age of 8. I had a raging alcoholic father, and I watched my mother die on the couch, both avid smokers. When I tried the first e-cigarette, I was done. I was done smoking. Prior to that, I tried everything: patches, pills, gums, acupuncture, meditation, prayer. The physical addiction combined with the compulsion and the learned behavior was too much for me to break. E-cigarettes are what saved my life over 2 years ago. I'm here before you today. A month ago, I interrupted the abduction of a young woman on my way home from church. I saw her being abducted. I followed her. I got the Kent police involved, and they stopped the abduction. If I had continued smoking, I would not have been able to do that. Also, I have a friend who's on the waiting list for a lung transplant. Prior to my being able to stop smoking, I would not have been an available resource for her and her family to continue on. And now I am. With that, I thank you for your time and your consideration. It's appreciated.
Thank you for your testimony today. Sir, you'll be our last witness on this bill, these bills.
My name is Josh Lindbog. I drove 2 hours just to oppose this bill. I actually wrote this here, so forgive me for any mistakes. Basically, I just want to go over some medical information from myself and the benefits and responsibilities that come along with e-cigarettes. I started smoking at 17, changed to vaping at 22, ended up throwing away a full pack of cigarettes the day I bought the pen. Never went back, other than the one time I tried a normal cigarette, just like Stuart Halson said, and it tasted like that little treat your best friend leaves for you on the ground. Threw it down on the ground and never picked up another one again. I've gotten regular checkups with my primary care physician every year since I can remember. Within 3 months of changing to vaping, my blood pressure went from borderline hypertension to perfectly normal, 110/85. Oxygen levels in my blood also jumped from 70% to 99% just within that 3 weeks. And then nobody has really addressed the whole tax thing. I sell cars, so I just want to kind of put it in a larger perspective as far as businesses go. People have been talking more consumers. A 95% tax would raise a $30,000 vehicle to $58,500 just to get it off the lot. Then you add the average interest rate, which, you know, a startup company has interest rates because vaping is new. They're all startups. And you're looking about $65,000 or so. Basically, you're looking with that 95% interest rate as opposed to the 8.5 interest rate that we have in Skagit Valley. You're looking at $6,350, sorry, not interest rate, tax rate. $6,350 per year in taxes as opposed to $2,550 with the 8.5. This puts your monthly payments for your car at $1,350 if it had a 95% tax rate on it, as opposed to, with the normal tax rate, $429. So that's like buying a base model, stripped out Nissan Altima for $120,000 after it's all financed, said and done. So basically what I'm getting at here is that essentially what this bill does to the businesses that sell vapor products, it'll put them out of business, which in turn takes jobs away from our community. And as Jason McGill said, keeping it out of the hands of children is key. I completely agree with that. That is up to the adults that buy that. Everything is toxic. Water, if you drink too much of it, it's toxic. It can kill you. It's the responsibility of the adults to keep the hazardous materials out of the range of children. It's not, the materials don't kill the children themselves. An adult has to intervene at some point, or a person has to intervene at some point. So it's not as dangerous as cigarettes. And the fact, I'd like to leave you guys with just one more thing. Just think how you would feel paying $1,350 per month for 8 years on a stripped out base model Nissan Sentra, Versa, what have you, as opposed to $429. End up paying $129,000 after 8 years, as opposed to $41,000. And it's just, that's what it's doing to the businesses. It's making their costs go way, 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 way up. And like I said, vaping's helped me. It's helped my health. Yeah, and that's pretty much about it.
Thank you for your testimony. With that, we will conclude our hearing. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.